Today we're going to talk about an important but a boring subject, but a critical subject: participation. Now, most people think democracy is rule of the people, by the people, for the people. But actually it's not. Democracy is rule of the people, by the people, for the people, by an engaged public. We were told, or led to believe, that improved communication that allows us to communicate with somebody kilometres away, thousands, tens of thousands of kilometres away, would somehow strengthen the bonds of community. Now, people pooh-hooed Margaret Thatcher when she said there's no such thing as community. There is such a thing as community, but modern technological innovations have destroyed the very foundations that hold a community together. A community obviously comes from the word commune. It's basically people coming together who have common interests, who live in a common geographical location, who face common threats. That's what creates community. And the life force that binds community and creates communities and expands communities is communication. Communication with people who find themselves in the same situation. Not because of a religious persuasion or political ideology, but because they have common issues. The fact that I can find anything I like on the World Wide Web, and if I can't find anything I like on the World Wide Web, I can go onto the dark web and find anything I desire, only creates atomized individuals who find themselves in a situation where they can try to satisfy their individual needs or wants without being part of a larger group. So what technology has created is a structure, an amorphous virtual structure, which makes people believe and think and act as if they are part of a real community. And this has profound implications for the real world, especially in a real world which is no longer grounded in a battle for survival. What that means basically is we have no common interests anymore. The sovereign nation state becomes irrelevant. Your religious persuasion becomes irrelevant. The fact that you live in a virtual world even makes your geographical location irrelevant. You can live a so-called full life without any access to the real world. as we see in the megametropolises which have grown up around the planet in an effort to accommodate the increasing stream of humanity. Now, this problem regarding the formation or the disintegration of community is heightened by the fact that we no longer live in a society based on the satisfaction of real needs, but live in a society based on the satisfaction of manufactured needs, needs which are manufactured to enrich minorities at the expense of a significant proportion of the population. So here we have the individual believing they have escaped the everyday constraints of being part of a community with a common aim and a common future. We see the breakdown of this artificially created society, this virtual society, when human beings are faced with natural disasters or wars. In those situations, the practical realities of satisfying real human needs takes precedence over the distractions which are created in a postmodern world to satisfy our cravings for consumer comforts. So we see the bonds of community being re-established, and in many regards during that period of crisis, whether it's war or natural disaster or interpersonal conflict, where we find that our survival is totally dependent on those around us, and this is what forms community. Today, we've seen a further fragmentation of that common bond that binds people together. We've seen the advent and triumph of politics which are apolitical. Political formations which are designed to satisfy the need for circuses. Especially in Australia, where it's very difficult to see any common thread that binds us as a colonial society together, apart from our dispossession of the original inhabitants. We find it exceptionally difficult to form communities. Although we have festivals or religious ceremonies, that desire or need to form communities goes by the wayside. What communities do is something that no virtual world can do. It brings people together who live in the same geographical area or have a common interest. It brings them together irrespective of their race or nationality or their gender or the language they speak, their culture, their religious beliefs, because it forces them to interact with other people. This interaction has disappeared in Australian society. There is little interaction between different groups, apart possibly when national sporting teams take to the field. We then see the formation of communities which have something that they can identify with. But ultimately, in a postmodern world where we have many options in terms how we spend our time, the desire to create communities is almost irrelevant. This highlights the increasing divisions which we see in Australian society and societies around the world. Divisions which to a significant degree are not only artificially created, but divisions which are encouraged by that small section of society that makes decisions regarding the trajectory of the nation as a whole. So the destruction of community allows minorities to impose their will on people. What is happening in this country is highlighted in the fact that fewer and fewer people, especially younger people, are participating at any level in day-to-day society. Participating in terms of interacting, in terms of creating organisations, in terms of supporting existing organisations, in terms of volunteering, in terms of assisting their neighbours. But somehow we think that participation is something that is no longer necessary. Nothing highlights this than the travesty of parliamentary democracy, where participation in the decision-making process is left to representatives who basically have a signed blank slate when they are elected to Parliament, because there is no way, apart from wait till the next election, in our constitutional arrangements for non-performing politicians to be recalled. There is no power of recall. And if we think and believe that participation in a parliamentary process is restricted to casting a ballot every 3 to 4 years, then we get the governments we deserve. And we continue to be faced with the same problems which should have been resolved decades, if not centuries ago. The fact that growing inequality has become a feature of Australian life. The fact that publicly owned assets were virtually given away to the private sector for a peppercorn amount. The fact that we now pay through the nose for these same services through the private sector. The fact that we tend to be communities in name only, giving our allegiance not to our community but to some vague, amorphous, virtual mass that has little to do with participation. Participation is the building block of societies. Communities are the building block which is based on participation. The lack of participation which we see in Western societies, in important institutions which have been created to deal with everyday reality and everyday needs, makes us easily susceptible to snake oil salesmen and women who somehow convince us as atomised individuals that they and they alone have the solutions to the world's problems. The solutions to the world's problems don't lie with individuals, no matter how talented they are, no matter how powerful they are, no matter how much finance is behind them. They are able to shape a society but not create communities. And it's communities which create societies which look after the fundamental needs of people in that society. There is no society without community. There is no community without active participation. It doesn't matter what the organisation is. What matters is participation in the framework of that organisation, not just in terms of carrying out orders, but in terms of making decisions regarding directions communities move in. The greater the amount of hierarchy in a society, the greater the concentration of power. The greater the concentration of power, the greater the concentration of wealth. The greater the concentration of power and wealth, the less need for participation. Allowing the virtual world to dominate everyday life opens us up to the reality of increasing inequality, increasing division, and ultimately violence on a scale that we have not witnessed in this country for generations. Around us, we see what happens when powerful individuals are given the key to state power. We see around us how wars have started, how millions suffer, and how few profit. And this will continue to be part of the human experience unless our participation rates increase, not just in organisations which deal with everyday life, but within our political networks, within the political spectrum we are part of.